Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris Untold Fails McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me for this episode is Brian Unsold Males Hickey. I don't even know what that means. I'm basically insinuating you're some sort of human trafficker, aren't I, in that sense? on this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at the latest issue of G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero 280. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, shall we? Untold Tales Part 5. Bespectacled, beautiful, brilliant and bombastic. Beware, the Baroness bewitches in the final Untold Tale from living legend Larry Hama, alongside hard charger and fan favourite G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero alum artist Ron Joseph. Writer Larry Hama. Artist Brian Shearer with Ron Joseph. Colours Jay Brown. Letters Neil Uyatake. Senior editor Tom Waltz. Editor Megan Brown. And research specialist Diana Davis. So before we get into the issue then, Brian, let's look at the covers. We've got quite a few actually to get through. So cover A, which is Ron Joseph on art and Adam Gazowski on colours. I mean, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I've got to say that we've been spoiled with the artwork on both the covers and the interiors on Real American Hero the last few issues. For quite a while, you know, with a lot of people like Nita Diaz kind of really weighing in there in a big way. So I'll say I'm a little bit, I suppose, disappointed with the artwork on this one. I feel, you know, the proportions on the Baroness seem a little bit off. The head seems a bit oversized.
A lot of oversized heads in this one. A lot of oversized heads.
I mean, you know, we're going to comment on this, you know, obviously with respect, because, you know, we are not the guys working under massive time pressure to kind of get this stuff out and hit print deadlines. But and so I'm always respectful of the work that artists put in on the comics. But this cover really is, you know, the Baroness cover has been done and done and done so many times and done really, really well. So this one kind of falls a bit short for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like, I mean, it's just you know, she's standing on the castle kind of parapet or whatever it is, and she's just kind of looking over the, you know, over the wall, and it's just, you know, it's okay. But you're right, like there's something just not quite right about everything. Like unfortunately, there's a shadow they've put under her mouth to her right as we look at it to the left. And it kind of, when you look at when you zoom out and kind of look at it from a distance, it just makes the face look weird, because I think, you know, the colours aren't coming through strong enough, so that black kind of just merges in with the red, and you get this weird like mouth shape, which really messes the head up for me, which looks kind of a little bloated and round anyway. But again, you know, it's all right. It's just, yeah, there's just something about it. It's not proportionally, doesn't really sing to me, and the way the sword is kind of positioned, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like a comfortable, normal pose that you would strike. So yeah, there's a kind of a lot going on in that one that I'm not a massive fan of, which is a shame, really, because it could have been really, really good.
Conceptually, it's great, you know, like the Baroness kind of looming over the parapet of the castle with these big towers in the background, you know, and she's kind of wearing these furs that are kind of blowing in the wind. You know, the whole concept and idea behind it, I think, is really strong, but just unfortunately how the Baroness is drawn, the proportions do look quite distorted, and there's just something a little bit clunky about this particular cover. Yeah,
I agree with that. And I will say that she's clearly nicked Prophet Director Destro's cape here for this one. Absolute, like, animal print-tastic. But okay, well, let's move on then to cover B, and that is art by Kieran McKeown and colours by Adam Gazowski again. And this one is actually slightly more interesting, and we have the Baroness sitting at this kind of like this chair, almost throne-like, but it's not. It's just a chair, basically. It's just a fancy chair that you get in like a castle. Yeah, exactly. She's got a pistol in one hand, and she's got a glass of what I'm guessing wine in the other. And behind her, in the kind of like, you can tell it's been done in a certain way, coloured in a certain way, that it's like just in the shadows a little bit, and you've got two Cobra Troopers behind her. This one, I actually really like this one. I like how the, you know, the characters look in this one.
Yeah, this is a much stronger cover option. I really like Kieran McKeown's artwork in this. But again, that leg in the foreground just looks maybe a tiny bit too kind of thin or small. I mean, geez, I'm really splitting hairs here today, Chris. I probably need to get more coffee into me or something. But no, this is a pretty good cover. I mean, I like kind of Kieran's this kind of a looseness to his kind of style. You know, it's coloured up really well. I like how the Cobra Troopers are ghosted back a bit, so it really puts the emphasis on the Baroness. That's a pretty nice cover, and it happens to be the cover that I got as well. So I'm pretty chuffed about that.
Awesome. Yeah, like that one. That's a good one. Okay, well, moving on, we have your classic art by John Royal, Jagdish Kumar, and colours by James Afraidy. And this is an all-female cover where the Baroness is striking a pose in the middle of a battle, you know, very impractical of her, with the two kind of female troopers behind her kind of firing in different directions. And you've got the Cobra flag burning in the background. It's almost like they're kind of defending to the very last the hill that they're on. Again, doesn't happen in the issue. Not that I don't think any of this happens. None of these really happen in the issue.
No.
But you know, again, classic maneuver there from these guys.
I mean, I have to say it's Danger Girl all over the front cover here, which is kind of John Royal's staple sort of title that he's worked on. John Royal has this very stylized kind of way of drawing female figures. Of the three covers, this is by far the strongest, albeit it's very much in John's particular style, so I totally dig that. That's I get where that's coming from, and I feel a little bit relieved that John Royal's gone back to drawing things that are not in the issue, because he was freaking me out there for the last few months, you know.
Yeah, we got that Ace cover, didn't we? That was clearly from inside the interiors. Okay, well, last up, and this is an interesting kind of homage cover, and it's the cover retailer exclusives, and there's multiples of these. There's 3 of them. One of them is just the cover with the titles and everything. Then there's one without the title, so it's literally just the artwork. And then there's a day version. So there's one at night in the rain, and there's one during the day. It's art by Kirill Repin, and it is Snake Eyes holding a pose on the edge of a building with some tanks in the background, kind of like in the distance behind. Technically, they're behind him, which is quite interesting. It's really messing with my head when I think about it. But this actually is an homage cover. Well, kind of 2 homages, I guess, because it homages the 5-part 1990 Spider-Man Todd McFarlane run, the Torment 5-parter, which the first issue had Spider-Man in this web, in his in his webs, basically, in that pose, the exact same pose, without the knives and swords. And that was actually really interesting, not an interesting story, but my brother, David, my half-brother David, he, when I was much younger, when I was like 9 or 10 years old, he gave me that Torment 5-parter that he had. He came to visit us. Like he's my dad's son from another marriage, so that's how we're connected in that way. And I always looked up to him. He was older than me. He was really cool. He was in the forces. And when he came to visit us, he brought this 5-parter, Spider-Man comic, and gave it to me as a present. And I still have them. I covet them. I love that kind of run. And so when I see that homage, I'm always like, oh, really cool. But this was actually homage, and I sent it to you beforehand, Brian. They'd already done this Snake Eyes cover effectively. Similar colouring, that kind of reds and blues and blacks, dark kind of colouring. And I think it's Gossier and Koblish did the cover. And now I think it was just done as like a kind of a reissue kind of cover exclusive kind of thing. I don't think it was, it was kind of, it went under the radar a little bit. But Kirill Repin has kind of done his own take on that, hasn't he, here? And done one during the day. What are your thoughts on this particular cover?
This is pretty cool. It's just that the whole concept of kind of Snake Eyes, camping out up high in the side of a building, looking down over these kind of enemy forces. We don't really know who they are, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't look like it's Cobra.
What I will say here, I think it's Barovian. And because I say that because we are actually inside the issue, we talk about Barovia, and this is one of those things where you could argue this does happen in the issue, but you just don't see Snake Eyes because he's up in the, he's up basically viewing what's going on in Barovia.
It's pretty cool. And do you know what? Maybe that's exactly what's happening here. This is a scene that we don't actually get to see in the story. Snake Eyes is watching all the action that's going on. This is I love that. Absolutely love that concept. And that's how it is in my head.
My head too, yeah. When I first saw it, I didn't actually notice the tanks It wasn't until I looked at the homage cover, which has the tanks on it as well, and I thought, oh, that's cool. And then when I went back to the look at Kirill Repin's covers, I'm like, oh, hang on, there they are. And like, you obviously see them a lot clearer in the daylight, but on the nighttime one, they're so subtle. Like, there's a real subtlety. Like, you hardly see them, but they're there. You can see the treads and the
turrets,
the turret, yeah, and the barrel of one clearly, and then another one kind of just off to above it. So yeah, I love that. I think it's really cool. I do like this cover. I think it's really nice, and it evokes that homage quite nicely. And even though it is almost a copy of that Snake Eyes version of that homage cover, if you really look at it, he's done a lot of differences. Like the style that the Snake Eyes of the clothes he's wearing is more practical. He's more like a superhero in the other issue, isn't it? It's very kind of like spandexy. But this one, yes, you can see panels and you can see the boots and the details, and everything is way more photorealistic to a degree. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that cover. Anyway,
great cover, fantastic work.
That's the cover retailer exclusives, and that's all of the issues. That's all of the covers. So let's get stuck in then, shall we, to this actual issue. Now, this is one where, quite in a rare piece of information or intel giving, Larry actually tells us that this issue takes place immediately after the events in G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero issue 34, which was the Sky Striker Rattler battle that had both of them basically coming to a stalemate. And they both got these battle-damaged planes, and they fly past each other and salute, the respect between Ace and Wild Weasel of, clearly met an equal in my skill set here. So that is a really nice touch, getting straight into this. And obviously, it's Wild Weasel and the Baroness in this battle-damaged to crap Rattler. And they are struggling, aren't they?
I mean, this thing is going down like a ton of bricks. Like, there's bit of canopies busted off. There's bits of the fuselage missing. There's it's on fire. There's smoke coming out of it. Despite how desperate their situation looks, the Baroness, she's not really worried that they're going to die. She actually tells Wild Weasel she's got absolute faith in him to get them down safely. And the reason being is that because he's just squared off against the greatest pilot ever and given as good as he's got. So it's great that she salutes her kind of comrade.
No, mate, it wasn't dogfight, it was Ace. Sorry, there's a little joke at Dogfight's expense, who is a great pilot as well, but he flies the Mud Fighter, so it's not really as sexy, is it? But anyway, yeah, no. Carry on, Ace. Yeah. Oh, actually, what I will say here is I like the fact that Larry explains why they haven't just ejected, which is really, really interesting here. It's because basically they've taken so much damage that I think Wild Weasel says the
canopies won't open; they'll be crushed.
Yeah, he says the airframe is warped. Basically, that's what he's saying, because the airframe's warped and there's holes in the fuselage. It means the canopies are actually jammed. So he's basically saying if they were to eject, they'd be mashed into the canopy, which he doesn't even have above him, but the Baroness does. So he's not leaving her to die effectively, which is really cool there.
That actually, I mean, when I read this first, I was trying to make the connection between this outro to an older story and the events in the newer story. And between the missions, there's no real connection, but it's really about this Cobra loyalty amongst the different Cobra members. So we've got this respect that the Baroness has for Wild Weasel. As you say there, he has a mutual respect for her, that he's not going to just leave her to die. Then as they're coming in, Destro is kind of, giving the order to dispatch the necessary kind of crash carts and fire trucks and ambulances. And, the guy in the control room saying, look, I've already done that, Destro. And then when they do crash and the thing's about to explode and they're trapped inside, the canopies are jammed, they can't get out. Toxo Vipers rock up to save the day.
Techno Vipers.
Kind of out of there. Techno Vipers. Sorry. I knew they were Techno Vipers. I just got my T's messed up.
Tele Vipers turn up and call them from a distance. I think what I really liked about this is the fact that Larry goes through all of the technical aspects of trying to land as well. So it's flaps and landing gear and all that kind of stuff. But the landing gear gets stuck and they can't actually, and she's like, how bad is that? And he's like, explains that, well, we've got no ordnance left, so we're not going to blow up that way. However, the what does he say? The bad news is that the system that fills the empty space in the fuel tanks with inert gas has failed. And so she's like, oh, great. Well, I trust you very much, and I believe you. I just saw you face off against Ace, so you should be fine. They hit the ground hard. They screech to a halt. They're on fire, and you're right. The Technovipers turn up, and what I like about that is that the Technovipers do actually have those like wicked axes that they come with, like that toolkit on their backpack. Yes. So it's a nice touch that they're the ones that go in and deal with that, instead of like where you could probably argue Toxo Vipers might have been good just because of the gear they're wearing, or I'm trying to think of other. They don't really have like a fire team. Their fire team just create fire, don't they? Yeah. Their heat vipers, their incinerators create damage. They don't. They don't stop it. So they get them out just in time. Everything explodes, and you were left with this really nice this page where Wild Weasel and Baroness are just kind of like knackered. Like Wild Weasel is just sitting on the ground, like with his head in his hands, and she's like rubbing her neck, clearly like injured and everything. But before they can even really just evaluate the situation, Destro calls her and says, "You're needed again."
Yeah, he rocks up, and again, there's a theme here of kind of loyalty within Cobra. Like the Baroness unquestioningly says, well, she does ask the question, like, right now, do I have to go on this mission? And he's like, yeah, I'm afraid so. And so she goes. But even, just before that, Wild Weasel is kind of saying, those Technovipers risked everything to get us out of there. So that's a big deal, that there's this kind of loyalty or brotherhood or sisterhood amongst kind of the Cobra forces, that they really stand by each other, they help each other. And by contrast, we're going to see a very different side of that later in the story.
Yeah, and I would say as well, like, it's not something that we've seen a lot of with Cobra, is it? Usually we're seeing them backstabbing and not really doing any of that kind of stuff.
This is kind of a story set much earlier in the G.I. Joe continuity. When you look at, say, Cobra Commander in more recent, say, story arcs that we've seen, he's like Snake Hunt, for example, he doesn't warrant any kind of loyalty. He's just despotic the way how he treats people, and you wonder why anybody's kind of standing by him. And clearly, even Destro and the Baroness in that story arc are kind of conspiring against him.
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting twist here.
Yeah, it's quite refreshing to see these conversations happening within the Cobra ranks rather than the usual, like, in the last issue when they were just like insulting each other in the cockpit of the Hurricane the whole time. Yeah. The Crimson Guard's basically saying, well, you're nothing. So it's interesting to see a different side of things, where Wild Weasel, who in the past has been kind of painted as, or he hasn't really had a massive amount of like character development. I mean, he's a bit one-dimensional in his character, much like Ace. It's not like Ace has had tons of character development. He's had a little bit in his file card, a little bit in the cartoon, but the comic, it's always, he's air support effectively. So yeah, it's nice to kind of see Wild Weasel kind of being empathetic to, or at least,
he's not your typical fighter jock.
Appreciative of the fact that those guys saved his life, and usually it's just like, well, you should save my life, I'm a important person. Anyway, yeah, so that struck me as quite refreshing. And anyway, the Night Raven turns up, and off Baroness goes to get in a different plane, which effectively at this stage I think would have been a massive upgrade at the time to the Rattler. And I think, I'm not even sure, would have been out as a toy at this point during issue 34. I might be wrong. I would have to look at the dates and times all this kind of kicked off. But we could be looking at like officially the first time seeing the Night Raven in this era, in this time period. But I could be wrong. Tell me if viewers, listeners, I know a lot of you are very on point with the comics. And as much as I have read them, and in recent times, my retention of knowledge is bollocks. So I just think, mate, it's like I've pushed out so many bits of important information trying to squeeze in G.I. Joe knowledge. Anyway, so then we basically the mission is an important one for the Baroness. There's this peace treaty that's going to be signed in Barovia, but actually it's actually being signed in Paris by the Barovian Prime Minister. And effectively, what we have here is that, Cobra are trying to intercept the motorcade to stop and kidnap basically this guy, to stop him from signing the peace treaty in Paris. And basically, she's flown out to to Montmartre, and taken to this l'Abattoir de Montmartre, and basically we have this weird situation where they've got it's Major Blood and a bunch of vipers who are not technically the vipers that Cobra sent, and they are torturing this guy who has information about the motorcade.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty horrific scene. Baroness walks in, Blood and these kind of shirtless vipers are
sexy.
They're fairly laying into this guy that they're interrogating to get information on the route of the motorcade that the Barovian Prime Minister is going to take. But he doesn't actually divulge any information. They can't get the information out of him. And Blood reveals that they actually got the information from another source. So they don't need this guy, and then just shoots the guy down in cold blood.
I find it funny that he does that in front of her when he could have done it ages ago. Or they could have just, it's. I think he does it on purpose. It's like, like almost like a statement to the Baroness. Yeah. It's like, I'm not a kind of, even though they know each other, she knows who Blood is, Blood knows who she is, and they're aware of each other's, I suppose, situation. I wonder if he didn't want, as Baroness comes in, he didn't want this guy divulging any information to her about what Blood's real intention was. So he could have actually divulged that information in this interrogation, and when she comes in, he's like, "Oh, he's going to say something if I'm not, if I'm not quick about this." That kind of runs through my head in this particular series of events.
Do you know what? I think you've nailed it there, Chris. And of course, she's clearly, perturbed. She can see, that was totally unnecessary. I'm just going to comment as well here. Looking at the art panels, we've got this panel where she says, shooting the informant was totally unnecessary. The way her face is drawn there looks very different to the way her face is drawn in the next panel. And it's almost like there's a slight inconsistency in the art styles. Yeah. I don't know. But she recognises Legionnaire tattoos on the Cobra Vipers, which makes her a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
And then she kind of exits the
stage left.
Don't make a hames of this, Blood, or there'll be hell to pay,
Absolutely. And then we go on over to the motorcade, in which case we have the highway from Orly into Paris. And we have the Prime Minister with his aide and the driver, and they're in this kind of cool-ass long limo with the the police cars around it and a motorcycle. And then the driver just all of a sudden says, "Look, actually, they're having a conversation, aren't they, first?"
Yeah, just a little bit of kind of exposition to kind of put some context on this. I mean, this guy's on a mission to kind of lock Cobra influence out of Barovia altogether. And and I love that the driver, asked him to, tighten, fasten the seatbelts. We've a suspicious vehicle.
He was going to stack him as missiles. It's a Stinger, for goodness sake. I will say I did it's not his aide, it's the financial advisor. It's his financial advisor, so I did her a little dirty there. But yeah, the driver's like, hang on tightly. I'm like, I'm not surprised. And then that's where you got Major Blood, and he starts reciting a poem, which I think is hilarious here. So he's riding outside of the Stinger. So there's a driver obviously driving the Stinger, and he's like, "When you're riding in a Stinger and you have an itchy finger, do not sneeze or twitch, for this'll prematurely launch a missile."
And then, he's like, "Did you just dig up Eric Idle from Monty Python?"
I did. That's how whenever I do Blood, I always delve into the soul of Eric Idle to get the voice. But I just love that. And then whoosh, off goes the missile, which is just, it's hilarious. I just think it's classic Blood, isn't it? In a really cheesy kind of not even I don't even think he did it in the cartoon. They never had him rhyming like that in the cartoon. He was always really serious in the cartoon, but in the comics and in his file card and in those kind of things, they've always made out that his poetry is really bad. So I love the fact that he does that. Anyway, doesn't hit the motorcade. He takes out he doesn't hit the limo. He takes out one of the police cars, and then you see this car of nuns or truck of nuns get hit as well by the police car, and they're like, "Mon Dieu!" And then we have the Baroness kind of watching this from above with binoculars, and she's reporting back to Destro.
Yeah, I mean, and she's really straight out of the gap. She's like saying that these guys are all former Foreign Legion. You know, he's deviating from the plan.
Yeah.
And Destro's like, yeah, the Vipers we sent with him all disappeared. Blood claims they deserted. So, you know, there's totally something up here now at this stage.
He also says these sources may have said that Blood is playing a triple cross here. Yes. So it's, you know, he's basically trying to do basically trying to like leverage his own kind of, you know, agenda, like taking money from the Barovian political opposition to kill Borowski and pin it all on Cobra. So, also, is it Brzezowski? Yeah, it's Brzezowski, sorry. But yeah, so he's like, you know, that's his angle, basically. That's Major Blood's angle. So we know that now. And in the meantime, we have the driver pulling off. And this is like this whole sequence is kind of like a very Mission Impossible, very like, if you've seen the trailer for Black Widow, there's a scene where they're going through the streets. Very one of the Bourne movies. Well, any of the Bourne movies, I think there's always a chase scene through a very historically scenic town, isn't there? But yeah, and they go right up the kind of stairway like to escape this stinger, and he fires 2 missiles, and they just about kind of squeak out, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, this is great. Great bit of action here, you know, as they kind of come off the motorway up the exit ramp. You know, truck gets hit by the missiles. They're up there now in the back streets of Montmartre. I think they're going to, you know, try and kind of outrun them somehow.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they come up against this massive armored truck with kind of machine guns. The Legionnaires, disguised as Vipers, all pop out of the flaps and start kind of, you know, peppering the limousine with machine gun fire. But, you know, the bullets aren't doing any damage. Blood gets on the blower and says, you know, quit dawdling around, break out the big guns. And just as they're about to open up with kind of a 50 mil chain gun, the Baroness rocks up on this little scooter with a cannon on the front. And
absolute whammo, just absolutely destroys it. And the Vipers are all like kind of shaken. They kind of get up and they're like, la Baroness, she's supposed to be on our side. Just shoot the Boudon, you know, Boudon. And as she drives past, just rips absolute shreds out of them with her machine gun, kills them all. And then you see Blood kind of go, I just knew she was going to be a problem.
You're just breaking out. You just open your drawer beside you, and Eric Idle's head sticks out. I just knew it was going to be
with an eye patch, and a helmet on. Yeah, yeah. And then you see that, you know, the Barovian Prime Minister's kind of clocked that that's the Baroness. He knows, what's she doing? And he's like, and then back to Blood, and he's like, but problems can be eliminated. And he fires another missile, kind of takes out like the floor in front of her. She kind of hits that hole and flies off the scooter. And then he's like, I'll deal with you later. And they drive off. And she kind of gets back on the scooter, and she's like pissed off now, isn't she?
Yeah, I love the way she says, deal with me later. We'll see about that. And, you know, like, you don't mess with the Baroness. And look, at the end of the day here, we all know Baroness is like really competent, total professional, never going to mess up. Blood, on the other hand, is a walking catastrophe. So he's in big trouble.
Yeah, she kind of loads up one of the, like, you know, shells, 75 mil worth, so she's going to absolutely destroy him. Whips off on the scooter, and then to save some time, she goes down some steps, kind of like, again, classic action movie shortcut, comes out behind Blood. He realizes and tries to swing the missile around to fire at her, but he can't hit her because she can, you know, maneuver away from it on a scooter. But it's hard, she says, to get away when you're on 4 wheels, and just takes out the Stinger. He's like basically alive, the driver's dead. He kind of gets up and he's like, well, you think you've won. Sorry. You think you've won? I already have an excuse Cobra Commander will buy, and you haven't got the sand to shoot me in the back. And she doesn't. She's not going to shoot him in the back. He says, until we meet again at the rally in Springfield then. So he's rhyming at the end, I think, and then laughs a little bit. And that's where it kind of ends, and we see the Baroness kind of approach the Prime Minister.
It's a great ending here. I mean, it's a total victory for Cobra. They get what they want without having to kidnap the Prime Minister, because he realises, A, that he's been saved by the Baroness, and B, that Blood was working for his political opposition in Barovia to try and take him out. So with that knowledge, he's like, yeah, tell Cobra Commander to give me a call. Maybe we can work something out. Don't know
Maybe we
why
can work
with an
something
accent at
out.
the end, but it's
Baroness. Yeah, I like all these like little accents you're doing in this episode. It's amazing. But yes, so that's basically the end of it. It's a nice little kind of tied up kind of story. I mean, what are your overall thoughts of the issue?
I mean, I really like the story for a couple of reasons. One, we have this kind of contrast in the loyalty that the Cobra team members have for each other, but that's contrasted with Blood's total lack of loyalty to anybody in Cobra, and he's completely self-serving.
Yeah.
So that was a nice touch by Larry. I didn't cop that on the first read. That was only when I went back over it the second time.
Yeah.
That really kind of hit me. Again, the action, once the Baroness gets into Paris, I mean, it gets very, fast-paced in there. And like you say, it's like something straight out of a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
It's great, really well written, and how that's kind of illustrated over the panels in terms of how the action plays out was really, really good. The crash landing scene is great as well at the start, and a nice twist at the end with that kind of victory for Cobra, albeit not exactly how they had planned to get it. So on the writing side, really chuffed. 5 out of 5 on the potatoes for Larry there. On the art side of it, not really feeling the art on this one. As a comics fan, I'm kind of art first, story second. If the art's really, really good, that's what's going to pull me in. And for something to lead with a front cover that it's not really that strong, and then even on the interiors, we didn't talk about it much on the story there. I did feel that it looked a bit rushed in parts. The proportions on the Baroness in a number of situations were off, and it looks like there's inconsistencies with the art style on a couple of panels. I don't, it's again, I'm have full respect for the creators. They're working under massive time pressure, and we'll never know as reviewers what kind of pressures they have to deal with. But I think compared to other stuff we've had recently in the Real American Hero line, on the art front, this has fallen a little bit short for me.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think like the actual story is really fun, and it kind of tying in with issue 34, but then also tying in with the Barovian storylines and everything. In this kind of like nice little like an untold tale, like a little side mission that we never would have known existed. It's nice to get that, but also to have that, like you say, there's a couple of like themes running through. Loyalty is one, but then also this Cobra Barovia Accord type thing is also a theme running through it, which it's interesting to see that's how they got to that position in the first place. So there's a couple of things in there that I really like. There's kind of like throwbacks and everything. For me, I'm a little like, it's not great to see Blood. I do like Major Blood as a character, and he's not in it that often, especially not kind of in like the way he's been in this issue. But I would have loved to see another Untold Tales where we had more of the roster, more people we haven't seen before. And that was my worry going into this. It was my concern going into this issue, knowing that it was about the Baroness. But as a story, I like it. But you're right, the artwork, it just doesn't hit the same levels that we've seen in previous issues. It doesn't kind of hit that mark for me. And yeah, there's one panel where we see Blood, I think, for the first time. And his body is actually like weird, he's like looks really short, and his head looks really big, and vice versa. There's another panel where he just doesn't look like the right proportions in there, and like he's in the foreground, so he should be bigger than the other one. But anyway, that was a little bit off-putting to me. But and the artwork is very cartoony as well. That's another aspect of it. There's a lot of softness to everything, a lot of curvature. You're not really. Yeah, but again, like it's a minor nitpick. I would probably overall give this one about 3.5 for me, because I think the story's strong. Great
story, maybe not so great on the art side, but look, it's one issue. It's not gonna ruin the G.I. Joe universe for us, But top story from Larry. He's in great form at the minute. He's really cranking out some brilliant stuff. Yeah, I'd say the artwork just brings it down to 3.5 for me.
Okay, well, yeah, I agree on that one, and I think we can basically move on now to the next arc. So this is like we've done all the Untold Tales now, and I mean, how did you feel about the Untold Tales as a little kind of side kind of thing in the kind of gap between the next arc, the main arc? How have you found them?
I really enjoyed them. I mean, they were great little one shots. they do tie back into the historic G.I. Joe storyline, but going back to the Marvel era, which is nice to see. And it's great to kind of round out some of those kind of arcs, kind of vintage arcs, for want of a better term. Just taking these Untold Tales on their own, they're great one-shots, and you could jump into the G.I. Joe universe at this point, the comics universe, pick these up, you can read them. You don't need to worry about all the history that's kind of, behind the different characters. And that's a nice way to kind of onboard maybe new fans, or maybe fans who've kind of, lapsed, gone away, and could come back again. So I think it was a great opportunity in that respect. But as individual stories, they were pretty cool. We got some nice kind of focuses on different characters, and they are character-driven stories. There's lots of action in them, but it's not really about the action. It's about the characters, and that's what made them really special, I think.
Absolutely, I've really enjoyed this. I kind of think they could just do these as a side series alongside the Real American Hero run. I don't see why why they have to make it just inside the Real American Heroes series. I think they could definitely have them as a little kind of spin-off that just runs as, special missions would, for example. So, I would love to keep seeing these, throughout. I have been told that there's a possibility that after this next arc is kind of completed, they're going to go back and do a few more one-shots again. So that's probably going to be the format going forward with the Real American Hero anyway. But so next up we have 281, and we have the start of the Sherlock arc, and that's the new character. A few new characters are going to be brought into this one, so we'll be jumping on that next week. Excited for that one, Brian?
Oh, really looking forward to that. I probably won't get my copy till next week on that one, but I really can't wait to get my teeth into that. I'm looking forward to seeing if there's any fallout from the Snake Hunt story arc, which you would expect there to be a lot of fallout from those events.
I'm just gonna say we're probably not going to see anything of that fallout. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Again, Brian, thanks for jumping on, mate, and doing this little comics burst. We're playing a little bit of catch up again, but we're only like one issue behind. We're all right. We'll get there.
Yeah, we're doing okay.
Oh, and we'll have Dead Game 5 eventually. I guess at some point in the next 7 months. I mean, how long's that been? I'm not even going to get in. Well, let's save that negativity for when we do that comics first. But thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated. That's it for this instalment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Brian Hickey. See you next time. And as always, Full Force! Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.